Hi, welcome to Future Fast. And like always, we have a very interesting guest today. And before I bring him on to the conversation, I hope you're enjoying our conversations and podcasts that we are bringing to you. And also, if you're not yet subscribed to Future Fast, do it right now. And please do share and spread what conversations that are coming on Future Fast because this is one is very important from a point of getting multiple perspectives so that we just don't get consumed or just become part of a propaganda in that sense. And apart from that, enjoy the conversation. And also, I'll just dive into the conversation that you're also looking forward to. Today, we have Kumar. Uh, Kumar Sankaran is the founder and CEO of Leucine Rich Bio, and we'll understand what is leucine and why leucine in the course of our conversation. But before that, Kumar, welcome to Future Past, and thank you so much for making time to be here with us.
Thanks, Nanjinda, for inviting me. It's an honor to be here on your podcast.
Thank you so much, Kumar. So, Kumar, before we talk about leucine, can you share your journey? You started off as a scientist, and it's not common that most scientists don't really end up as entrepreneurs. So, can you please share your journey here?
Sure, but after I finished my master's and when I was applying for a PhD, I got a job in a drug discovery company, and was hired as a scientist in that company. Once it was such an amazing role. Once I got that role and also started getting salary, I think the PhD dream went out of the window. And so I've been an industrial scientist throughout my career. And so I think the path to becoming a entrepreneur became that much easier than probably being an academic scientist.
Oh, well, actually, you make it sound so easy that anybody who works in a corporate organically becomes entrepreneur. I'm sure you know it. And most in our audience also, since we have mostly entrepreneurial community following our podcast. So, how did this move happen? When did the trigger happen for you to be an entrepreneur?
So I was probably worked about 10 years in the industry, and the kind of expertise I had and the role that I played all along. I wasn't getting jobs, jobs in India, and I had to go outside India for other opportunities, and I just didn't want to leave India at that point of time. Um, this, parallelly, there's always been a bug to start something on your own. I didn't know what it was. It was there for a really long time. I think it was. I was having a conversation with somebody about the website Carvale. I don't know if you remember that. I mean, it used to. They used to. I think they're still around. They used to sell used cars. I mean, at one point of
Yes,
time they
yes,
were really
correct.
big.
And they're quite big today. Yeah.
Um, so uh, so I was listening to their story and it seemed like this is something. I was young and naive then. I thought it was something that I could we could do it in the biotech space. So a friend of mine and I got together. And the journey was purely accidental. I mean, we said, no, let's start a training course. We'll see it for 3 months, and then let's see what happens. And every 3 months, we kept changing the plans and kept moving forward. Before I knew it, it's now a 9-year-old company.
So, did you start it as Lucien, or what was it then? What was the first avatar as a training business?
It was, we started off as Leucine Rich Bio. And the I had already had a blogging website called Leucine Rich Bio. So, just continued using that. And when we had to officially create a company, it was easy to, create a company with the name Leucine Rich Bio. There was no, uh, there was no competition for that name, so to say.
And where did that come from? I mean, why did you choose Lucien Rich for your blog? That was how long was that before you started your own?
I think I started that blog in 2007, 2008, I think. around that time. I mean, the blog didn't take off quite well, but I used to post every once in a while. The name comes from so when I was a very young, naive scientist, I thought I found a molecule that could cure diabetes. This protein had a lot of leucine-rich repeats. So leucine is an amino acid, and this protein had a lot of leucine repeating in its structure. Um, and the name also had leucine rich in the protein's name. So uh, that's the journey of leucine rich bio. So it was an inspiration from that, and I took that and started the blog, and from the blog it went to becoming the company's name.
Okay, interesting. And you said you started off with a friend. Is your friend still part of this journey?
Yes, Pravat and I, we were working in the same company for a long time, and then we kind of moved into different paths. But we got together in early 2014, and we decided to first start doing workshops for students. The first workshop that we conducted, there was only one student that came, and then we quickly realized maybe workshops are not the way forward, and started talking about preventive healthcare and started the company. We're still together. Um, my other co-founder, Dr. Devajat, joined us in about 4 or 5 months later. We were also colleagues in our previous organization, and so all three of us are still around, sticking, working hard after 9 years as well.
Well, uh, did initially both of you quit your jobs and jumped into it, or was it you got started parallelly while you were still on job?
No, well, we quit our jobs and we started. I don't know if that's the wisest decision that we've ever made, but there was no looking back after that. I mean, there was no safety net because we quit our job. We had to do something, and we kept persevering and trying to make something out of the company.
Wonderful. And uh, what were the iterations that you went through your journey? I mean, what was the after training? What was it that you got started before you got into where you are today?
Oh, so we were having a lot of discussions on preventive health. We've always wanted to do something in preventive healthcare. In our previous experience, I mean, we'd worked a lot in drug discovery, and we knew, once a person gets a disease, how difficult it is. Been to a lot of hospital settings, and seeing how cure is so much more difficult, and prevention is much easier, at least at least on paper. So we wanted to do something in preventive healthcare, and they were even for the workshop. I mean, all the workshops and seminars that we were initially conducting was around any kind of preventive healthcare measures. Um, so we talked a lot about human genetics in the genomic space. We saw what can we do in that area to for preventive healthcare. At the same time, we were discussing on the microbiome. Um, for some of the viewers who've never heard of the term microbiome, it's especially the gut microbiome. It's all the microbes that are uh, living in our gut, and just the sheer volume of microbes actually control a lot of our health and behavior. So we were looking at these two aspects and thinking how we can take the science as a business application forward. So initially, we wanted to build it as a SaaS platform where anybody could upload any kind of genomics data, and we'd make meaning out of it, process it, and give it back. And then iteratively, we slowly moved into a full-fledged product and healthcare services company.
So when you talk about this approach, both your partners were coming from similar background as yours, or what are your backgrounds? Because somebody had to be leading in software side of it, right? You came from biotech side.
Yeah, but in my previous role, I was always a liaison officer between biotech and software.
Okay.
Although I can't code, but if I look at an error, I generally know what is causing that error. So, and as my training in biology, it helps me to understand what the biologists actually need from the software guys.
All right. So
So
you became the lead on the software side, or the one of the other two partners that you had take that lead? I mean, how's that?
I took the lead in the software side. So, and until date, I still play that role of the quasi chief technical officer. Um, it's the computational biology side is a very interesting space. It's a space that if you're a pure computational person, it's not very easy to jump into. And at the same time, somebody with a biological background also finds it a little difficult to do coding in for biology. So getting that right kind of mix is very difficult. There are a lot of nuances that's there in computational biology that you don't find in many other domains, especially from a coding perspective. So yeah, I mean, my years of training of talking to both the computational guys as well as biologists actually helped me in planning it out for our own company.
Kumar, usually, when two co-founders get together to start company, a lot of roles get responsibilities get overlapped, and
Mhm.
it is fine to do it early stage because sometimes you have something personal to attend to, and your co-founder pitches in for you to he covers you up and things like that. But as the organization starts scaling, it becomes imperative to have little more formal organization design in place, so that who owns what, who controls what, and how the decision is made, and all that. So it's usually advised for startup founders to have a founders agreement capturing each of those things, including exit. Did you guys do it in that formal way? How did you approach? I presume this was a first venture for all three of you.
Yeah, first venture for all three of us. I had done some consulting, wanting to start a company before this, but officially this was my first venture. Um, but I mean, you're very right about the founders agreement and nailing down the responsibilities. We initially didn't do it, but we quickly realized that it was needed. I mean, I had a look at our founders agreement a few days back, and I was laughing at all the points that we had put over there. But it was important. It was important at that point of time. Like you rightly mentioned, in the beginning, there's a lot of overlap. Everybody's helping out in the various departments. But I think the one thing that uh, what we did, and I think it is important, is that if we can get one person responsible for it, for the outcome of the task, or a department, that'll be good. All of us help to make the task, to complete the task, but the responsibility of the outcome is on one person. And that way the responsibilities can be shared, amongst the founders, and there's also a little bit of accountability that comes into play because of that.
How did you ensure accountability? Because see, what happens is, particularly the first-time entrepreneurs, right? Particularly you come from a working environment where you had a boss, and there was somebody who was asking you questions, or somebody who was telling you what to, how to, and why not to, and all that. So, and when you are on your own, obviously it's a good feel that you don't have someone telling you that. But how do you, how did you ensure the accountability? Because that is again necessary, right? A lot of times I see co-founders don't really try to question each other, because I don't question you, you don't question me. And it's a very unfortunate recipe for disaster, and most people actually end up doing it. So how did you counter that and handle that?
The the funny and the best thing is that all three of us have the same temperament, but we have three varied approaches in every aspect of work and life. But since our temperament is almost at the same wavelength, I mean, we are able to communicate, debate, argue with each other, and ultimately, take whichever has the most merit forward. Um, and when there is no money in the bank, Anjo, it becomes accountability automatically will start coming in. You'll start questioning, whose responsibility it was for getting something done and why it wasn't done and all of that, and that will fall in place. The key is being transparent, is having that conversation without it leading to raising of voices.
Right, right.
And to add to that, the best thing that we've done in all these 9 years, and the reason we've got along, and startup journey is always very, very tough. But the reason we've got along all these years is we don't meet after office hours. Uh, so
Oh, you don't socialize?
we don't socialize after office hours, so it's kept us sane. So every once in a while, I mean, we probably go out for dinner or something like that, but it doesn't happen on a regular basis. So, and I think that's what has kept all of us
That's
together.
interesting. But why do you think that helps? I mean,
I mean, because 9 years is a long journey. I mean, you definitely need um, some, and when you're having a startup, you're there mentally almost all your waking hours. So, and when you
yeah, you
go
may
out,
not meet over the weekends, but you'll still be talking about this didn't happen, that has to happen, this is
yeah.
delayed.
So when you're taking your instead of taking your family out for a movie, if you're spending time with your co-founders, you're back into discussing about work. You're not letting your subconscious do a lot of the thinking. You're arguing unnecessarily at that point of time. All of those. So that little bit of break every day is needed.
Actually, it's a brilliant point. In fact, I worked with an investor. He had invested in a young startup where all three co-founders were out of college for a year or so, but they all were living together after college also. And that's where they started working together. They started initially moonlighting after work sorts because they were staying in the same place. So that kind of helped them bond in early times to get started with their own venture. And that's how this investor also jumped in. But little ahead, they had whole lot of issues, and I'm very unfortunate that the very team split. So, how long it took for you to start making money in your journey? Because one thing is that most people stick it out when the money is yet to be made, because
Mhm.
nobody wants to be the first one to pull the plug when people are
Mhm.
struggling. At least early on, right? I mean, if they were to be
Yeah.
of that sort, they would have pulled out much earlier or not even joined the team. So most people, when they come together, so how long was this journey from a point of making money to the extent that you left your job and you don't really see the difference now?
So our journey was I mean, especially life science biotech journeys is very different from all the other kind of startups that you might see. We spent about 4 or 5 years in R&D, before coming out with our product. Um,
It was
During that,
self-funded.
it was self-funded for at least the first 4 years.
Wow.
And but what we did was, we so the first 6 8 months, we were building the product, and then we kind of quickly realized, I mean, we need a little bit of cash flow coming in. Without that, it's going to be really hard. Um, so, contrary to a lot of advice, we actually got into doing a little bit of service. So consultancy kind of a business. So, but the good thing that we did was it was in the domain in which we were building our product. So any consultancy work that we were doing would actually help us build the product much better. It also got a lot of scientific credibility, to the company's name in the domain that we were in. So that helped a little bit of the cash flow to come in. So to answer your question, I think the first $100 came 8 months into the business. Um,
Well,
and
that
and
is exactly the point where even the team starts splitting in many cases. What happens is that when you start working on consulting and services component, uh, each one starts. I mean, some of them starts getting paid little more.
Mhm.
Some don't get because their role is not really fitting into that kind of a thing. So it so happens that one is bringing more money than the other. So that is one reason why things get into some kind of a complexity. And two, that's the same time where the one who's uh, perceived stronger from one of the external parties for whom you're consulting may even end up offering something. So how do you ensure, or how did you ensure? I mean, were there conflicts situations that you actually faced in of this sort?
No, because all the consultancy and services we were doing as a company. Yeah, it
No,
wasn't an
even as a
individual.
company, contributions would vary, right?
Yeah, but with every project, the contribution was coming from a different person. So, and we all knew our roles very well. We knew that for the next 3 months, this project would require one of us to be more involved, and we were quite okay with that.
Just one small detail. What was the average age at that point of time, 10 years ago or 9 years ago when you started?
What, 9 years ago? So we must have been in our early 30s, mid 30s, kind of thing. So the one thing that is all of us had 10 plus years experience before we started the company.
So
I
10
don't know how
plus
much.
years of working perhaps did bring in a lot more collaborative thinking, so to speak. But at the same time, early 30s is a very me first thing, right? Because you've got that recognition, that individual, and also our society. Everything is very me focused at that point in time. So,
Yes, yes, it is. But if you've worked in biotech, especially in research oriented companies in the life science biotech space, everything is collaborative. And there is no way one single person is going to make a difference and get that recognition. So that culture was kind of built into us in our previous organizations, and I think we kind of continued, in the company that we started. Uh, and I don't have many rules for company, but the only rule that I've had from day one is no calling anybody sir or madam. Everybody's on first name basis, and there's no, let's try and not build any kind of hierarchy in responsibilities, yes, but no hierarchy kind of a thing.
right. And also coming from these kind of research institutions where funding was not really a challenge to uh, self-funded thing. So, how do you decide which one should get more allocation of the limited personal money that you put in? So, how were you arriving at that decision? Was there a kind of a framework you put in to make those decisions?
I wish, especially in the early stages, it was more a gut feel as to what will work and what will not work. Like I mentioned, the three of us think in very different ways. What we constantly do till date is all of us debate on the point. We all put in our views, and eventually. Um, the view which has more merit will definitely come out, and we kind of take that forward. So there's no framework as such, other than making sure that everybody's viewpoint is heard out thoroughly before making the decision.
And did you also expose each of you to go through some kind of a review by the others? I mean, how?
A review in the sense.
I mean, sort of performance review, even as co-founders.
Um, not formally, but we would periodically have those conversations. Um, um, you know, especially so I'll give you one example. Especially I was in charge of you know making sure investment is coming in, and it's very hard for to raise money in the field that we are in. And till date I've been very poor in that department. um, so the question is, what is it that I am doing wrong, as well as what is it that the company is doing wrong. So these kind of reviews, we very periodically have.
In fact, that is one thing where some of the co-founders usually do it offline, as in, catch up for a drink in the evening, or do some kind of outing. But that is where they tend to bring in, because within the office you also have employees, so they don't look at bringing in that. They don't have this agreement to do a formal review, but these things are taken offline. And the idea, the expectation is that because it is informal, and sometimes even with the families, because you've gone out together, so they tend to use those situations. So but that was not an option with you, because you had a very strict rule that you will not
I, I
socialize.
I don't know if it was a strict rule. It was something that
It
all
just
of us did.
organically fell in place.
It just organically did, and it was. I mean, it's easy to do this bonding and getting together in the first 2 3 years. Um, Post that, especially in a low revenue early stage startup, it is very difficult to go out for an outing, try to enjoy an outdoor activity while not trying to kill each other. So it's if you can build a system where you're sitting in the office and you're actually um, uh, discussing these things formally, I think in the long run makes more sense than to try doing it informally.
Right. And what was the first outside funding coming in? I mean, how difficult or how challenging was it?
Um, First of all, I mean, when we started off, we didn't realize that we required funding. As in, we thought we could build the product in 6 8 months. As soon as first time founders, you build the product, and immediately there'll be customers waiting in queue to buy it, and there will be revenue.
That's a very
Uh,
typical thought process most people have. Yeah.
Yeah, so never ever thought about distribution or anything like that. But as we were developing the product, and as we were, moving further and further away from a SaaS platform to a diagnostic tool, we realized we required funding to come through. The second thing, the consultancy. I mean, I've always been wary about not doing too much of services. I don't know how I got the mindset of ensuring we're not doing too much of services, but I knew at some point of time, if we don't cut that thing, then we'll become a services company, and which is something that the three of us, we just didn't want to do. So it took us a little bit of time to even start talking to investors. So it was at least 3 years, 4 years into the journey before I even went out and spoke to the first investor. Um, and from there, it took me at least another year before one investor said, "Yes, can we have a second meeting?" So
So, how
uh,
many investors did you knock on the door of, to the point you got your first check?
I'm guessing at least about 40, 50 investors, um, easily. Uh, and I mean, I mean, it took us about 40 investors for me to realize all the mistakes that I was doing, and for people to convey the message in such a way that people call you for a second meeting.
You never
Um,
considered going through a incubation facility, or did you get incubated anywhere?
no, we somehow didn't. Again, there are not too many incubators. I mean, there are lots now that have come in the biospace. But back when we started 2014, there was hardly any incubators, and by the time a few had come about, and um, uh, we'd already gone much further in our development, and we didn't want to get into the incubation space. Even some of the acceleration programs that we got into much later, and that was for specific purposes. But early on, we didn't get into any of the incubator at all.
Well, you also say you mentioned that you want to approach preventive care rather than treating the sick. So, how do you explain sick care to healthcare?
Yeah, can I? The question that we have is, can I catch your disease even before it manifests anywhere in any of the tests? Can I correct it 10 years before it can even come? Um, so that's the kind of thing that we want to look at
But
to
Kumar, how do you keep your what you offer as healthcare versus not just wellness program? Because wellness uh, companies actually talk about the same thing. So how do you make sure you don't fall into wellness, but you are in the health space, but again, be sick? So how do you make that?
Sure. So when we're talking about preventive, uh, I'm talking about when you're early symptomatic of any chronic condition, and there itself can be arrested and can be reverse the condition is what we're trying to build out. And at some point of time in the future, can we develop biomarkers that can detect this even much before than the first symptom that you get. So that's the kind of approach that we're thinking about, and we're looking at purely as a clinical play. We're not looking at um, as something that is online and
Dietary based or a workout or exercise based. It's not that. It's clinic.
It's still dietary based. I mean, we still do food as a medicine, but it is what we're trying to do is develop, clinical. Can we develop clinical markers based on the microbiome to do both diagnosis as well as food as therapy?
Right, right. So how easy or how difficult is this space? Because how much of data is available, and that too at a startup stage, right, in the genomic space? First of all, we don't have such large public infrastructures in India, at least. So when you get started and that too self-funded, what was your data source? Because I think it is what you can build software applications, but without data, they don't mean anything. So how did you go about that? How did you solve that problem?
So the first way to solve that, so when we decided to go core into microbiome, and there was absolutely no Indian microbiome data at that point of time. I think my sample might have been the first sample ever to be done profiled in India. So that's how less the data was at that point of time. So when we were doing the consultancy service, the one thing that we made sure was that we're getting microbiome data. This could be from academia in the West, but it was still microbiome data, so that all the software and algorithms that we were developing, if it could answer for the Western data, it could, with a little bit of tweaks, it can answer for the Indian data as well. So that was one part of it. Get the projects involving microbiome data from the West. They pay us measly pittance for it, but it
Also
helps us.
gives you some access to data.
It gives us some access to data. Then within India, the microbiome kind of changes with lifestyle and geography. So people living in North India would have a different kind of microbiome than people living in South India. So we were the good
And
thing about
perhaps
us.
even South Karnataka to North Karnataka, right? Their ability to digest a chili is phenomenal. So
Yes, it changes. I mean, to an extent that just by looking at the microbiome data, I can now predict whether this person is from an urban setting or a rural setting. So it is that dynamic. Um, so what we did was again, this was pure accident, that we encountered a wellness company that were training athletes who are representing India at the international level. So they were like, give us something that can improve our performance by 0.5%. And he said, okay. So we said, we'll do the microbiome profiling. We'll look at what is there, and what are the suggestions that we can make. But there is no benchmark. I know I can't tell you that, this is 100% certainty or anything like that. If it works for you, let us know. It'll help us improve. And if it doesn't work, also please let us know. So that way, we got a lot of people who were willing to give their sample, were willing to listen to us talk about this really new domain that nobody's ever heard about. And but it actually helped them in certain aspects of, in their athletic career. That A gave the wellness company a little more confidence in the kind that we were doing, and B gave us confidence in, what we're doing is right. And that's how we started collecting a lot of the Indian data.
Well, Kumar, just stepping back into the your business. Uh, you three co-founders are not. You can't really say friends because you started off as colleagues and then started working together, and you also don't socialize, so that you keep a very professional approach, which also brings in accountability. Fantastic. But how do you ensure that? How do you manage your personal goals, venture goals, and also targeting, because see, individually each of us have our own aspirations, right? So how do you align it? Did you do any kind of exercise? Did you engage somebody to help you with that? How did you go about it?
I think the personal goals have suffered the most with all three of us. But we we didn't do it. Nothing. We didn't get advice or do anything about that officially. The one thing that we kind of, every kind of annual meeting we kind of lay down is from a venture goal, where is it that we want to go. And we kept looking up after the venture piece of it. And on the personal front, we kept surviving. If I had done the same, if I had put some personal goals in the beginning, it would have been nice. I think we would have focused a lot more on that in the beginning itself. But I think it was the venture goals that we were focused on, and not really the personal goals as much in the beginning. The 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 notion, all when it came to personal goals, the notion always was, maybe next quarter I'd like to start taking a salary. So that was the
Oh,
only thing
that
that was.
okay, okay. That's anywhere far from being a goal. So to speak. Did you ever put together an advisory board? What kind of people did you bring in there?
So for the longest time, we didn't have an official advisory board. I mean, from a scientific point of view, we didn't need one. From a business point of view, what we did was, we went and spoke to anybody and everybody who were willing to listen to us and give us a little bit of feedback on what we were doing. And I mean, I can probably talk for another 1 hour about, all the people who've been very selfless and taken time out and talked to us about what we're doing and how we can do it better, and given their advice on a lot of things on the business aspect. And but we didn't have an advisory board for a longest time as an official advisory board.
So, do you wish you had one much sooner?
Um, the, Even now, the in terms of the people officially, giving us advice, it's more.
Come from the
Um,
investors?
yeah, it's not come from the investors. It's more that we've gotten into a stage in the company where it's going to get a pretty large multinational. And there could be, we need to relook at how we are structuring the company, all of that. So and especially the finances part of it, as in from a taxation point of view, those kind of things. That is something that we don't have too much of knowledge on. So so we were looking for somebody who'd help us in things like that, and hence those are the people there on the advisors mostly. And now we have one or two doctors who again, when we are conducting all our clinical trials, since all of us are from the discovery background, we kind of we design the trial in such a way that it's more for discovery, and maybe not as much for hospitals and doctors as much. So we needed somebody to tell us, nine out of 10 y'all are doing right. This is the one point that y'all might have to change when it comes to clinical trials. So those are the kind of things that we have now getting into place. To answer your question, I don't know if you had done it initially, whether it would have helped us or not.
Right. Well, that's one other observation, right? Somehow tend to see most Indians are averse to going and seeking help or advice. Uh, so, so that is one thing. I don't know if it is uh, the Indian thing that stops us, or otherwise. And sometimes, recently I came across one other startup where they have multiple advisors, and he was seeking my advice. And one advice I gave him is perhaps you should take out this advisor who was advising on these things. So it's very
Yeah,
uh, so we do have sometimes good people, good intention, but sometimes they're advising beyond something that they could help with, and in the course advising in a wrong direction also.
yeah.
So these situations are there. So
Yeah, which is why I didn't want to make it an official board. I mean, the things that we were doing were so new and novel that not too many people had experience in that. So what I took a lot of advice from a lot of people. I would constantly go out, seek people and share my problems and see what they had to say about it. But as a board, we kind of resisted
but
for
how
the
would you qualify what advice is good or bad? Because if you have a professional engagement with an advisor, there is an element of accountability, right? There is an engagement. So that, but if it is just a free-will advice, how do you qualify what is important to employ, what is not as important or not at this point in time? How do you do that if you just randomly seek advice and from multiple people?
As a founder, I think it's your responsibility to distill, all the noise and knowledge that you're getting from everybody.
So you would go
And
back to the co-founders and debrief, this is what happened, and then you
yeah,
collectively arrive at it?
yes, and I think that is the responsibility of all founders to be done. Anybody advising or as an official advisor, whatever inputs that they're giving, it doesn't necessarily mean everything needs to get translated into the business. It is the founder's responsibility to ensure um, th- nobody knows the company as well as the founders do.
Absolutely.
So it is the founder's responsibility to ensure what they're taking and what they're leaving out.
Right. And
But
yeah,
I make it sound as though it is black or white, but it is not. I mean,
never
we've made
is.
a lot of mistakes. I mean, got hurt a lot of times, and after all this white hair, only then some level of knowledge has come. I mean, still a long way to go, but if you don't make those mistakes, you're never going to know.
Right. And are there people who you want to recall in terms of your journey who have helped you to be where you are today?
Um, I wrote a LinkedIn post a long time ago where I mentioned, I mean, the first people you probably have to convince about your startup and really sell your startup is family. And if you can get them to support in whatever you're doing, then half the battle is won. And so you know all three of us, I think family has been very, very supportive in what we are doing. So That's one thing. Early on, there there were a couple of the buildings that we were having the offices. The landlords have been, I mean, I hate to call them landlord. They're now very very good friends of ours. You know, their their role in our startup has been phenomenal. I mean, just to go bounce thoughts of them and the kind of advice they were giving and they were or the kind of perspectives they were giving about it. None of them are from the from the bio background, but just to get their feedback into a lot of things have helped us in a long way.
Right. And any books, podcasts that you want to share with that are your favorites that you still follow as podcasts with our listeners and audience?
Um, Anju is sorry,
Yeah.
I kind of lost a bit of that.
No, no. Any books or podcasts that you want to recommend to our listeners and audience?
Um, Podcast point of view, I think um, what's his name? The LinkedIn founder, um, Hoffman, the PayPal guy. Reid
Reid
Hoffman's
Hoffman. Yeah.
Yeah, Reid Hoffman's podcast is for startups is pretty good. I think that yeah, there's a lot of tidbits over there that can really be used. Everybody's favorite is 0 to 1. Do read the book. Don't take everything from the book, but do read the book. It's There are a lot of YouTube videos, especially podcasts like yours, Nanju. There are a lot of such videos where you're actually hearing real-time entrepreneurs talking about their life and their startups and their journey. I think those are any day better than and the kind of information that you get out of it and the knowledge you get out of it is any day better than anything you will get in a book. So go through those YouTube videos is my recommendation.
Well, I'll use that to say do follow Future Fast. Sure. Well, Kumar, thank you so much for sharing your journey and really get you back to talk about the business. And I hope the audience and business enjoyed it as much as I did in having this conversation with Kumar. And please do share it across your network and do follow Future Fast and come back soon to follow the next conversation that we are going to have with Kumar. And until then, enjoy the ride. Kumar, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me.